The Bee Gees had survived family tragedy, addiction, and the death of disco. But on a November night in 1997, one television host finally broke them. Clive Anderson thought he was being funny when he compared their legendary harmonies to a cartoon character. He had no idea what the brothers had been through that year, the pain behind their smiles, the pressure they were carrying. When Barry Gibb stood up mid-sentence, viewers knew something historic was happening. The walkout lasted only seconds, but it revealed a secret the band had hidden for decades. Barry Gibb came into the world on September 1, 1946 in Douglas on the Isle of Man. At a time when people were still trying to rebuild their lives after World War II, food was limited, clothes were shared, families stretched every little thing they had. The Gibbs lived simply, and because Barry was the oldest, he learned early how to look after the others. Their father, Hugh, played jazz drums, but work was rare on the island. And by 1955, the family returned to Manchester, hoping things would get better. Those early years shaped Barry more than anyone knew. He helped his mother, Barbara, with Robin, Maurice, and Lizzie. He learned to be steady, even when life wasn't. His first guitar didn't arrive as a gift. It came through insistence and effort, and he learned to sing in a place where chances were small. The Isle of Man gave him roots, but the struggle after the war built the determination that made him the center of the family, and later, on the soul of the Bee Gees. Robin and Maurice arrived 3 years later on December 22, 1949 during a harsh winter storm. They came early. Their needs added weight to a household that was already doing everything to survive. When the family moved back to Manchester in 1955, the twins were 5, stepping into a home where daily life meant counting pennies. Barbara worked long hours in factories, coming home tired. Hugh tried to find work, but often failed. There were nights with no electricity. There was a day when Hugh sold his drums to buy food. That sight never left the boys. It lit a promise inside them that they would never go hungry again. Still, in the middle of all this, Robin and Maurice found light in singing together. Their voices blended even when they were young, and those early harmonies carried them through the darkest moments. Then came March 5, 1958, when Andy Gibb was born in Manchester. He entered a family already stretched thin and always on the move. By then, the Gibbs had lived in so many places that Andy's earliest music memories were filled with new homes and sudden exits. Post-war Britain music wasn't offering much. Hugh traveled for work for months at a time. Barbara handled 4 children on her own. Bills piled up. Eviction notices appeared. Andy grew up with music, this constant movement. It made him bold and independent. It also made him feel the distance between music himself and his father. And as the older brothers rose in music, Andy felt both pride and pressure. Those early years left marks that later shaped his choices and his path. By mid-1958, the family knew they had to try something new. They boarded the SS Fair Sea for a 6-week voyage from England to Australia. Entertainment on the ship was limited, but the boys soon made their own fun. They sang for passengers and even earned a little money. Songs like "By the Light of the Silvery Moon" filled the crowded decks and hinted at what was coming. Life on the ship wasn't pleasant. It was cramped. It was hot. Homesickness was a music daily thing, but singing brought them closer, and it kept hope alive. On September 1, 1958, they stepped onto Australian ground, leaving behind the gloom of Manchester for the brightness of Queensland. That move changed everything. The warmth, the space, the sense of possibility made the boys dream bigger than ever. Still, the years before Australia were rough. The Manchester flat was a shock even for that time. 1 room, no electricity, candles at night, cold mornings, Hugh selling his drums for food. The boys performing in any place they could. They formed a small skiffle group called the Rattlesnakes when Barry was only 5. They played on street corners, in small halls, anywhere, music. People would toss coins. That hunger to rise from nothing shaped them. It taught them to work, taught them to listen, taught them to blend their voices until they sounded like one. Their first real band moment came in Manchester in 1957 when Barry, Robin, and Maurice formed the Rattlesnakes. Their first stage appearance was at the Gaumont Cinema, where kids would run on stage between films to mime to Elvis or Tommy Steele. In December 1957, the brothers performed Wake Up Little Susie by the Everly Music Brothers. The crowd couldn't believe how tight their harmonies were. The Rattlesnakes lasted until mid-1958, ending the moment the family moved to Australia, but the foundation was already set. In Australia, they sang after school for coins on Redcliffe streets and at the Redcliffe Speedway. Promoter Bill Good hired them to sing during racing breaks, standing on the back of a truck and collecting whatever people music threw at them. Those nights built courage and confidence. They were learning how to hold a crowd even before they were teenagers. By 1960, after settling in Redcliffe, the boys began performing more often. Their name changed after they met radio DJ Bill Gates and Speedway promoter Bill Good. Because their initials matched, people started calling them the Bee Gees. Soon it turned into the Bee Gees. They practiced endlessly in their garage. Hours of harmonizing, hours of experimenting. Music, neighbors complained, but the boys kept going. Barry's falsetto, Robin's vibrato, and Morris's tight blending slowly turned into a signature sound. The garage became the room where their chemistry was born. Their first big Australian break came with the Three Kisses of Love in 1960. They recorded it on a simple home tape machine in Brisbane. Cole Joy produced it. Robert A. Yardale engineered it. The orchestration was light with a violin, a string bass, and pizzicato drums. When Brisbane's 4BH radio played it, people were stunned that these voices belonged to boys aged 13, 11, and 11. The song, released on March 22, 1963, became the side of their first single. It showed that they could write and that they had something different. It was their first real step into the world. By February 1963, they landed their first major TV appearance on Brian Henderson's Bandstand. They performed Ticket to Ride before the Beatles even released their version months later. Their energy and confidence caught the attention of Festival Records. The label signed them after more than 20 rejections from others. Suddenly, the boys had a foothold. Bandstand opened doors, led to gigs, and gave them their first real audience in Australia. The momentum was building behind the scenes. The family strain was real. Hugh demanded 12-hour rehearsals every day. He wanted them sharp. He wanted music, them ready. But the pressure weighed heavily on Robin. One day, he ran away for an entire day before returning home. He came back tired and stubborn, refusing to quit. Maurice sometimes rebelled with him. These early clashes hinted at the tensions that would resurface later as fame grew. The discipline shaped them, but it also carved deep lines into their bond. Then came the British invasion years. The Bee Gees returned to the UK in 1966. Within weeks, they signed a 5-year contract with Robert Stigwood and Polydor Records by February 1967. Their UK single, New York Mining Disaster, 1941, came out in April 1967 and jumped to number 12. Critics were so shocked by their harmonies and tone that some believed it was the Beatles under a different name. The rumors, music, spread fast. Even Brian Epstein took notice before his death. Their debut UK album, Bee Gees First, released in July 1967, confirmed that they were now part of the British music wave. Later that same year, they wrote Massachusetts in Paris. It took only 20 minutes. It came out in September 1967 and went straight to the top in the UK. It earned them an Ivor Noel Award, but success came with accusations. Critics said it copied Yesterday by the Beatles. The talk grew loud for weeks, but no legal action ever came. Still, it left a mark on how some people viewed their songwriting. Late 1967 brought another shock. On their way to a Las Vegas residency at the Flamingo Hotel, their flight suffered a major engine failure over the Atlantic. They feared the worst. The emergency landing left them shaken. They can-led several shows until they could perform again. Maurice later said the fear stayed with him for a long time. The incident became part of Vegas lore, a reminder of how close they came to disaster. Then came 1968 and the release of Words. The song reached number 8 around Music, the world. Barry wrote it after a nightmare about war. Robin, recovering from throat surgery, recorded his part while under heavy painkillers. The drugs changed the texture of his voice forever. Barry ended up carrying most of the lead. The result felt emotional and haunting. It became one of their most loved songs. That same year, To Love Somebody brought trouble. The song had been written for Otis Redding, but after his death, the Bee Gees released it themselves. Stigwood pushed the group toward legal action over fears that Redding's estate might challenge it. A settlement happened outside of court. Critics accused the Bee Gees of leaning too close to soul influences. The drama stained the moment and showed just how tough the industry could be. The trouble inside the Bee Gees started slowly, almost quietly, but by the late 1960s, it was strong enough to shake everything they had built. After their 1967 hit, 1st of May, Maurice Gibb began feeling pushed aside. He watched Barry take more of the spotlight and felt his own ideas slipping into the background. The arguments during their next album sessions grew louder each week. And by 1969, Robin walked out. He didn't leave in anger alone. He left because he wanted to prove something. His first solo single, Saved by the Bell, reached number 2 in the UK. It stunned everyone, even his brothers. Around the same time, Barry stepped in front of TV cameras for the BBC film The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, showing that he also wanted to explore something outside the group. Suddenly, the brothers who had always moved together were drifting apart. Their unity, once treated like it would never break, looked fragile for the first time. The tension hit its music peak right after the Odell Festival in 1969 when the Bee Gees announced their split. Maurice took it the hardest. He slipped into drinking, hoping it would dull the fights. The heart of the feud was simple but deep. Robin felt Barry dominated songwriting and stole too much credit. Barry felt he was carrying the group during hard times. What used to be small disagreements turned into full family arguments. Even dinners at home became long nights of blaming and shouting. Maurice later admitted that the emotional weight nearly crushed him, and the brothers came closer than ever to losing each other for good. Fans were shocked. The Bee Gees had always seemed like a unit no one could touch. Now they looked like three brothers fighting over music, attention, and identity. It was the closest the group had ever come to ending forever. They tried music, repairing the damage in 1970 when they reunited to record 2 years on, hoping the music would smooth out the cracks, but things didn't fall into place. The album only reached number 32 in the UK, a painful slide from their earlier success. Their sessions in Ita were especially rough. Harmonies that once connected so easily now sounded tense. Every decision became a debate. Every lyric felt like a battle for control. Critics immediately noticed the strain in the music, saying the group had lost the magic that made them special. The failure of 2 years on proved that brotherhood alone couldn't save a project when old wounds still sat in the room with them. It showed how fragile their chemistry had become. While the older brothers struggled with their problems, Andy Gibb watched from the side. He was only 14 when he signed with RSO Records. He wanted to be music, like his brothers, but he stepped into their world at the wrong time. The chaos of tours, parties, and backstage scenes exposed him to things a teenager shouldn't have seen. By his late teens, Andy had already experimented with drugs. The pressure to match the Bee Gees' success weighed on him, and the atmosphere around the family only made it harder. This early detour into addiction set the tone for the battles he would face later. His story, hidden behind the shine of his talent, became one of the most painful parts of the Gibb family history. The trouble had actually begun even earlier. In 1968, during a tour in Australia, Maurice was nearly killed in a car crash. He suffered internal bleeding and needed weeks of music hospital care. While he healed, the band tried performing as a duo. Robin and Barry did their best, but the hole Maurice left was obvious: music, in every show. Their harmonies felt thinner. Their confidence wavered. The accident showed fans and the brothers how much they relied on each other and how quickly everything could fall apart if one piece went missing. The Bee Gees tried to hide how serious the accident was. But inside the group, it became a quiet reminder of how fragile their success, music, really was. Everything shifted again in 1975 when Barry caught a rhythm on the Julia Tuttle Causeway Bridge in Miami. His car tires made a steady beat and he built a song around it. They first called it Music, Drive Talking until Barry accidentally said Jive Talking in the studio and it stuck. The song came out in May 1975 and hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks in July. It was their first U.S. top 10 hit in 4 years. Some critics screamed sellout because the sound was so different from their earlier folk rock style. But this new direction saved them. It opened the door to the disco sound that would redefine pop music. It was the beginning of something they, music, couldn't have predicted. In 1977, Robert Stigwood chose them to create songs for the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. He rejected more than 50 demos from other artists and handed the Bee Gees a script instead. He told them to write songs that matched its mood. The brothers went to the Château de Rouvel in France and in one weekend wrote Stayin Alive, How Deep Is Your Love, Night Fever, More Than a Woman, and If I Can't Have You. Those 5 songs became the backbone of a soundtrack that sold more than 40 million copies and won, music, 6 Grammy Awards. It became the best-selling soundtrack of all time and changed their careers forever. Stayin Alive itself came, music, from exhaustion. While recording in Miami in 1977, Barry's voice kept cracking from overwork. Their solution was to push his falsetto through almost the entire song. Only one line used his regular tone, the line, Life's Going Nowhere. Somebody help me. That tiny shift created their signature disco sound. Meanwhile, John Travolta wasn't even supposed to be Tony Manero. The role first went to Henry Winkler, but he turned it down. Travolta got it only weeks before filming. His performance paired with the Bee Gees' music turned the film into a worldwide phenomenon. By 1978, the Bee Gees were on top again. Their world tour covered over 200 shows and earned more than $100 million. But behind the scenes, everything was cracking again. Robin Gibb, a heavy smoker, suffered a vocal hemorrhage during a Sydney concert. He collapsed after singing Massachusetts and was rushed to a doctor. He was warned that one more strain could destroy his voice forever. He didn't quit smoking. The pressure, the fame, and the pace of touring were hurting each of them in different ways. Then the backlash came. In 1978, a police raid at a Miami party linked them to drug activity, and UK tabloids labeled them cocaine kings. They denied the accusations, music, but the damage was done. Anti-discoco sentiment grew fast and exploded during Disco Demolition Night on July 12, 1979 in Chicago when thousands of people watched disco records being blown up at Comiskey Park. It was chaos. It was hate. And the Bee Gees became the main targets even though they were nowhere near the event. Their image took a hit that never fully healed. Fame was pulling each brother in dangerous directions. In 1979, Barry Gibb began taking Valium to handle stage fright. He lost control. His intake reached more than 40 pills a day. By the time they reached Los Angeles, he was close to overdosing. Staff stepped in just in time. He spent a month in the hospital and the Bee Gees had to cancel shows. At the time, no one outside the inner circle knew how serious it had become. Years later, insiders said the whole operation was running on sedatives and stimulants with Barry's dependency the worst of all. He treated lyrics like snorts, therapy. While he worked through that pain in 1983, the brothers drifted toward a softer sound. That shift led to a song they first imagined for Marvin Gaye, but it ended up in the hands of Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. Islands in the Stream came out in 1983 and became a turning point both musically and personally. Barry later admitted the divorce shaped that new direction more than he liked to admit. Then something surprising happened. After 6 long years away, the brothers walked back into the studio in 1987. They recorded ESP in Miami, splitting their time between Middle Ear and Criteria. The mood during those sessions wasn't smooth. Maurice Gibb was dealing with the aftermath of years of drinking. His liver was suffering and he later turned to Alcoholics Anonymous in the early 1990s. The brothers were also stepping into digital recording for the first time, chasing a techno-pop sound that was new to them. And yet, in the middle of that tension, they created You Win Again. The song hit #1 in the UK and several other countries, but in the US it stalled at number 75. Australia loved it, pushing it to number 4 and helping the album reach about 741,000 equivalent sales worldwide. That comeback should have been a victory, but it arrived just months before tragedy. Andy Gibb died and the celebration faded into grief. The hurt didn't stop there. When they made their 1989 album One, everything felt heavy. A fan letter had asked them to write something real. That request turned into Ordinary Lives, a song filled with simplicity and sorrow. They had just lost Andy, and Robin Gibb was facing a second marriage crisis that nearly ruined the album's promotion. Even with all that weight, they pushed through. Ordinary Lives reached number 7 in the UK and fans embraced it. The album carried the ache of their private battles, but also the hope that music could steady them again. On stage, they still drew crowds. Their 1980s Las Vegas residencies pulled in more than 100,000 fans, giving them moments of joy in a decade marked by loss. But behind the curtain, Andy Gibb was struggling. He filed for bankruptcy in 1987, worn down by addiction. Then on March 10, 1988, he died in Oxford at age 30 from myocarditis, a heart condition tied to drug abuse. The shock hit the family like a punch. Barry later said he carried guilt for not helping Andy more. The brothers led shows and the grief carved a deep line through everything they did afterward. One became Andy's album in spirit. They dedicated it to him, hoping people would understand the love behind every track. Their family pain wasn't the only battle. In October 1980, they filed a $136 million lawsuit against their manager, Robert Stigwood. They accused him of mismanaging their fortune and hiding millions in royalties from their disco era. Stigwood fired back with a $310 million countersuit. For 6 months, the case dragged on and exposed the messy truth about royalty control, power, and trust. Stigwood had been both their manager and their employer, a mix that raised serious questions. The lawsuit settled privately in 1981, but it revealed how vulnerable the Bee Gees had been at the height of their fame. Even as they tried to rebuild, new frustrations waited for them. Their 1991 album, High Civilization, looked like a strong music follow-up to ESP, Europe welcomed it. The UK and Germany pushed it into the top 25, and Secret Love climbed to number 5 in the UK. But in the US, things fell apart. Warner Brothers barely promoted it. Some stores didn't even stock it. The album limped to number 166. Interviews from that time show how angry and confused the brothers were. They believed the label sidelined them despite the effort put into the music. They kept going because they always did. Then came a brighter moment. Still, Waters arrived in 1997. It climbed to number 2 in the UK and sold more than 4 million copies worldwide. What people didn't know was that Maurice Gibb was going through chemotherapy for colon cancer while they worked on it. He pushed himself through every session even when the side effects hit hard. To protect him, they recorded in home studios around Miami, keeping sessions short but focused. Many days all three sang together at once, trying to capture the harmonies that define them. Maurice's courage became the core of the album, and fans could feel that strength in the music. The 1990s also, music, brought strange moments that most fans never heard about. The 1990s also, music, brought strange moments that most fans never heard about. Tribute specials music, like Coca-Cola Celebrates the Bee Gees, reminded the world how influential they were. But in 1991, Robin Gibb became the center of a scandal when he accidentally set fire to his home in Spain. The tabloids exploded. Local authorities pressed charges. The conviction was later dismissed, but the damage was done. Robin already struggled with public perception, and this added music fuel to the idea that he was the troubled twin. It slowed their momentum at a moment when they were trying hard to rise again. And the biggest wound of all still sat with them. After Andy's death in 1988, the brothers carried guilt that didn't fade easily. In the 1990s, they began therapy together. Week after week, they talked about the weight they carried. Barry admitted he had put career above family at times. Robin voiced his resentment. Maurice held more sorrow than he showed. Those sessions lasted for years and helped them rebuild their relationship. That healing poured into still waters and shaped the way they recorded and performed. Then came a scare in 1995. Their private plane hit severe turbulence so violent it brought back memories of their 1967 crash that haunted them for years. The pilot made an emergency landing. The tour paused. Doctors ordered vocal rest. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Their voices recovered and the break helped preserve the harmonies that carried them on to Larry King Live in 1996, where they spoke about Andy with someone who knew him well. By the time 1997 arrived, the pressure around them had grown heavy again. Still, Waters was supposed to be their shining return, but instead the late 1990s media climate mocked them more than ever. The disco sucks movement still, music, echoed. Comedy shows turned their falsetto into a punchline. Saturday Night Live made skits out of them. Their genius as songwriters was buried under jokes. Barry at 51 carried most of the weight because he was the voice people associated with those falsetto hits. Robin and Maurice, both 48, felt the sting, too. They entered their BBC interview with resilience, but also quiet frustration. They hoped for respect they rarely got. But when they agreed to appear on Clive Anderson Talks back in October 1997, they didn't expect what followed. The audience showed up excited. The BBC hyped it as a fun promotion for Still Waters. From the first minutes, Clive Anderson pushed the wrong buttons. He mocked their falsetto. He teased their disco past. He interrupted their stories. The tension grew in slow steps. And each remark hit a bruise that had never fully healed. Viewers watched it happen in real time. What should have been a simple interview turned into the breaking point. On November 12, 1997, everything snapped. Clive compared their voices to Mickey Mouse. He joked they were hit writers missing one letter. He kept cutting Barry off, calling their songs easy disco fluff. Barry stayed calm until he couldn't anymore. He said a simple bye, stood up, and walked off. Robin rose immediately and followed. Maurice paused only long enough to answer, "Music," Clive's attempt to stop him. "I don't do tossers." The room went silent. No shouting, no argument, just a quiet exit that said everything. The clips spread fast. News outlets replayed the moment across the UK and the US. Fans defended them. In a twist no one expected, Still Waters' music saw its sales jump by about 20%. Barry later said the walkout freed their souls, ending years of holding their tongues. It showed the world they still had pride in their craft, and it forced a conversation about how musicians were treated on television. The moment became a piece of music, history etched into the story of a group that had survived fame, ridicule, grief, reinvention, and everything in between.